Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we're checking out this white, blue and green or Bant colored Yuna Overlords deck, and this build is rotation proof, so nothing's rotating out at the end of the month. And our key build around is Yuna, Hope of Spira. This 5 mana 3/5 says during our turn Yuna and enchantment creatures we control have trample, lifelink and ward 2. At the beginning of our end step we get to return up to one target enchantment card from our graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So Yuna can be a nice source of life gain, but also just a very powerful reanimation engine that can keep getting back our various enchantment creatures in this case. And Yuna also pairs very well with all the Overlords from the Duskmourn set, as they still offer the flexibility of being impended, so we still have the option to play them earlier in the game, so we're not just playing a deck full of expensive spells that we cannot cast. And then the blue Overlord in particular is great for setting up Yuna, as when it enters, whether we impend it or just play it for 5 mana, we get to draw 2 cards and then discard a card, so we can discard another Overlord to set up Yuna. Then the green Overlord is great for helping us ramp and fixing our colors, making an everywhere land token, and then can maybe set up Yuna on the following turn already, or we can start hard casting our 5 mana Overlords. And then at 4 mana we can maybe impend the white Overlord, otherwise 7 mana to cast to make a 6/6 joined by a pair of 2/1 insect tokens. And then we can also fill the graveyard with Dredger's Insight, another enchantment that Yuna can maybe get back, can also gain a little bit of life whenever a creature leaves our graveyard. And then rounding out the deck, we also get to play with a full set of Helga, another payoff for going in the Bant colors as opposed to maybe going for a Naya Yuna deck, as Helga replaces Up the Beanstalk as our card draw engine, while also making extra mana, so can also help ramp out our various expensive creatures, as we get to put a +1 counter on Helga each time we play a creature with mana value 4 or greater, gain a life and draw a card, and then Helga makes mana equal to its power, so the more Overlords we impend or cast, either way we get to trigger Helga and then set up even more mana on the following turn. And then rounding out the deck, we've got some spot removal with Get Lost to deal with creatures, enchantments, or planeswalkers. And then Heritage Reclamation can cover the artifacts that Get Lost cannot destroy, while also giving us a bit of graveyard hate for matchups where that might be necessary. And then we've got multiple sweepers as well, since our deck is pretty weak against kind of the go-wide aggro decks of the format, especially in best of one. If you're up against like a green-white Rabbits deck, if you're just going to start impending Overlords, you're going to be too slow and the opponent's going to overwhelm you very quickly, so then you need this kind of reset button that a Day of Judgment can provide, destroying all creatures. And at 5 mana Ultima can destroy all artifacts and creatures, and also ending the turn in the process. So this is especially backbreaking against any of the blue-white artifact decks. Now a quirky interaction with Ultima and the Overlords is that because we're ending the turn, we're not going to get to remove a potential time counter from an Overlord that's impended, so do keep that in mind. But otherwise, sweepers are still pretty good alongside the various impend Overlords, as we can still develop our board by impending them, but at least we're not going to get our creatures swept up by these various board wipes. And then the mana base is filled to the brim with Verge lands and Surveil lands, so those also have natural synergy, as the Surveil lands help the Verge lands make both colors, and then by surveilling we can also improve our draws, maybe put some enchantments in the graveyard for Yuna. And then I'm also running a single Cavern of Souls in case we're up against a deck with lots of counter spells. We can maybe name Avatar or Horror to make our Overlords uncounterable even if we impend them, or on occasion can also make Yuna uncounterable instead. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw. Hand's a little slow, but we do have sweepers to catch back up, so hopefully those are good enough. And then found our second green for the Overlord as well. Blue Overlord is maybe overkill. Don't know exactly what we're up against. Blue-red could be Oculus, could be VV Cauldron. So a big flyer that draws isn't bad. Can also find Reclamation as graveyard hate, so maybe it's good enough. So yeah, it looks like the VV Cauldron deck. We do have an Ultima in hand, which can also blow up artifacts, so that could come in handy. But I'll prioritize the blue Overlord over the green one, otherwise we had to play a green source last turn. For now, play the blue Overlord. And then, since we don't have Yuna, I don't think I'm discarding an Overlord necessarily. A land can probably go. So we can Day of Judgment if necessary. Impend white Overlords. Maybe it lets them overextend. And then we don't have to worry about destroying our own Overlords with our sweepers. Alright, they've got the Mako. Yeah, I'm liking make a pair of 2/1 flyers. And then hope they play Cauldron plus another creature, so they run into my Ultima. Now I guess one thing to mention with Ultima, by ending the turn we don't get to remove counters off our Overlords. So that's a little bit of a nombo, depending on the situation. So yeah, opponent's got Cauldron, so Mako makes 5 mana here potentially. Play another VV, so at least they're tapped out. Happy to chump. Opponent's gonna bounce 1 token. And Dragon Hunt the other, perhaps. So yeah, we couldn't have asked for a much better setup for this Ultima. Showing the value of being able to handle artifacts as well. Take 6, at least. There might be more. I guess Vivi can also make a bunch of mana here. Can they give it haste? Or are we just gonna see Winter Night Stories? So they still have a pretty full hand. So possible they can still recover from the board wipe. They still get the memory trigger too. Yeah, I guess Vivi also gets the other Vivi's ability, so can basically make mana twice. So that's also a combo. So yeah, pretty impressive. 5 more counters on Fear, so that can now also make a bunch of mana. So if they still have a Thrill Seeker in hand, we're just dead. And they're just gonna activate Sanctuary. They might regret that in a second. So yeah, no time counters removed. But at least we're not dead. So I'll take it. Another Vivi. Has to rebuild. We drew Yuna, which is useful. Although don't have any enchantments in the graveyard at the moment. So probably prefer green Overlord, and then next turn I can Insight plus Yuna, or we can just Day of Judgment to Vivi if we think it's too much of a threat. Although, with only 1 card in hand, I think we need to develop our own plan. Looks like they might have a bounce spell. Yep. Alright, so there's a chance I die to Sanctuary and Vivi now. Sanctuary activates. So taking 4 at least. So it might be worth it to take a turn off to Day of Judgments. Then end of turn we get the Overlord as well. And then Yuna can gain us life back on the following turn. Alright, Mako. So things are lining up pretty well for us. And with Insight I could even gain 1 life, which could matter. So let's see here. Insight gains life whenever an artifact and/or creature leaves. So I could get Helga. I have Overlord on defense, next turn another one, and then Yuna can flip the game around. Although Ultima really did the heavy lifting this game. Yeah, this VV Cauldron deck can do some pretty impressive things, especially if you get VV exiled with the Cauldron. Being able to use VV twice is not something I'd really seen before. Okay, so can go Helga into Yuna. And then I guess we'll make Yuna uncounterable just in case. Otherwise, we're better off naming Horror or Avatar. Was just double checking Helga's creature types to make sure it wasn't also a cleric. Alright, fair enough. Opponent has another bounce spell for Yuna, so don't get to gain any life. So can still discard an Overlord to maybe set up Yuna to reanimate it. But our opponent seems pretty dead. At 5 we should be safe from any top deck. And I'll still play Yuna just because. Alright, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a keepable hand, I want to say. Look for a second green source. Dredger's Insight is likely to find it. Can set up Yuna for us. Opponent blue-white. If they're on Omniscience combo, Reclamation is going to be useful. Could just be blue-white control. And there's our green mana. So possible they can counter the green Overlord, but so be it. Next turn we can just go tap lands, impend the blue one. Yep, no more lies. Exiling Overlord means no getting it back with a future Yuna. So this is the type of matchup where we would love to find our Cavern of Souls. For now, we'll just impend. That resolves. And then our sweepers are not a priority. Could see Ultima maybe blowing up an artifact at some point. And Surveil. Keep the Overlord, just need some threats. Flanker can exile our graveyards. Our opponent's also prepared for the various Reanimator decks. Can of course just gain 2 and scry 2 as well here. But maybe once Yuna shows up, they'll target the graveyard instead. Helga is also pretty good to resolve, so can try that before impending the Overlord. And then I don't think keeping up Reclamation's a priority. Don't need more lanes. So Helga draws cards whenever we cast a spell that meets the condition. So at least that helps in the face of counters. But yeah, the opponent's win condition likely involves Jace at the moment, at least for the next few weeks before it rotates out. And yeah, we're pretty weak to kind of a controlling mill deck, since we're slow to apply pressure. Their white board wipes and removal spells are effective at slowing down our win conditions. And without Cavern of Souls, counter spells are also pretty good. Alright, I think we impend Overlord, so we don't overextend into a sweeper as much. If the tokens resolve, we can also put the map tokens to use before maybe casting Ultima. So let's give that a try. I guess next turn I could impend and pay for another No More Lies, but they could just have a 3 steps ahead in hand, which I would rather make them use now without them drawing and discarding with it as well. But if they have another No More Lies, I might be a little disappointed here. So that resolves. Can go exploring. Don't need Reclamation. And then I should probably split things up. Okay. So now, if our opponent pulls the trigger on a board wipe, it's fine. They're gonna sack their fish to draw, so that's maybe points in that direction. If they attack, I would probably take it, since I need my creatures to apply pressure to an opposing planeswalker if it shows up. Especially if Jace shrinks down one of my tokens, I would like the other one to be able to attack it. Now that they cast stock up, it's maybe less of a concern. So yeah, even if we draw a good card like Yuna, the problem is it's weak in the face of opposing board wipes. So we would much rather just keep impending overlords, get a bit of value, and slowly pull ahead without putting everything in play at once. So their opponent does not have double blue up. They do have lockdown, so that deals with our tokens and the insight. Although Reclamation can get the insight back at least, and so can Get Lost. So maybe start with Reclamation. Could also just draw a card with it, but getting an insight seems better. More likely to hit something big. And yeah, don't need any of those sweepers. So then now I'm just gonna Surveil, pass, get an Overlord end of turn. Don't need another Ultima. Alright, let's see if they have more spot removal. I imagine they do. They might also have the blue dragon to bounce two things when it enters. And yep, there's the River Regent. What are we bouncing? Overlord and Overlord? Nope, just the one in play. So now Ultima looks good, so I'll take 3. Get to make use of a sweeper, which otherwise wouldn't be very effective. And then I still have the mana to impend the green Overlord. This would be pretty awkward in the face of a Spell Pierce, but it's not a card I would really expect him to have. And since Ultima ends the turn, we had to sequence it this way. Okay, so next turn I can recast a blue Overlord. The white one's about to come into play. So we can now pay for the conditional counter spells. But they might have a 3 steps. Yep. So counter, draw and discard. So yeah, this is kind of where the blue deck can start to take over. I'm sure they have plenty of sweepers left in hand still. So the white Overlord's unlikely to go the distance. And I'll keep another insight. Dreams of Laguna, Surveil, draw. Yeah, not sure what their win condition is. Could still be Jace. Possible they're just counting on the Regent, backed up by counter spells. Jace is definitely the scarier one, since we can't really interact with it in any meaningful way. Unless they get greedy and don't mine us right away. Cast Insights. This would not be the best turn to put something big into play because of the white Overlord coming off Impend. But I could Impend another one I have in hand. And then it's going to come into play in a bunch of turns. Or I could hold it to just hardcast. Yeah, maybe that's still better. Although, the problem with not impending it is that they could have just a spot removal spell like Get Lost, and then don't necessarily need to cast a sweeper. So this kind of forces the issue. So they're not going to counter. So we had the mana to cast it for 7, but that would just be asking for trouble. And then we would also still be within range of No More Lies. So their opponent's flashing back Dreams. Yeah, if they have 2 Jaces in hand, they can just play both and win the game. Opponent's got an Ultima. Ends the turn. And I guess we'll cast another one. And that resolves. Probably gonna see the same play as last turn. Possible they can take a hit and then wait for the green Overlord, so they can get everything at once. But yeah, this was a tough matchup before Up the Beanstalk got banned, so it didn't improve since then. Opponent with the stock up, so they've pretty much seen their entire deck by now. Probably going to be Ultima with 3 steps left in hand. Or just to Get Lost, okay. We can go exploring again. Don't have many sweepers left in the deck since we milled a bunch. Maybe I should surveil before I explore. Get Lost I don't need. And Get Lost I don't need. Get in for 5. And get the Overlord. But our opponent still has a lot of life to spare. Gonna be a commando end of turn, so that can destroy my enchantments. And make a fish. Alright, so maybe our opponent's on the beatdown plan here. Another region bouncing the flying tokens would be pretty effective. They're gonna copy the commando. Alright, I guess I'll Get Lost it, and then they sack it to destroy Overlord. Still seems better than letting them make a copy. At least they have to use another counter spell. Negate. So Commando covers both of the Overlords now. And they can get in for 4. So yeah, maybe they're not using Jace after all. So this would be a good window for Yuna. And there we go. So hit you for 5, play Yuna, get back the blue Overlord most likely, since that can immediately draw some cards to find more threats in case there's a board wipe. Should maybe cast it before we attack, just in case they can counter for 2 mana. It's not very likely, but you never know. And then the Dredger's Insight would also gain us a bunch of life back. Yeah, I think I like Blue Overlord. And gain 2 right away. And land can go. So we're fully overextended into another sweeper. But they need to have it, otherwise they might die. And yeah, we still have 2 Yunas left in the deck. So we're not too far from drawing another. Our opponents used 2 copies of 3 steps, so they could still have 2 left. And then multiple copies of No More Lies. Lay down arms, exiles Yuna, that's fine, happy to see that. Means that they're not planning to cast a board wipe. Regent to bounce stuff. That's okay. So they're now back into kind of playing into our Day of Judgment. So I don't think it's worth it to attack first in case they counter, because then I might want these on defense. So let's just start here. See what they decide to do. That works. And then now, whatever I cast next, we don't want to run into a No More Lies. So I could cast a 5-mana Blue Overlord. Seems okay, maybe Surveilling first. Keep Yuna. Alright. Don't think I bother impending the green one. So we're just dead to a single Jace. But yeah, opponent's just doing it the old-fashioned way. I'll start by trying to cast the White Overlord. Can pay for double No More Lies. Opponent draws in response, so they're digging for answers. That resolves. So now I'm less incentivized to cast another threat. Can just go exploring. Also somewhat scared of milling. So yeah, maybe I'll keep the Verge on top and then next turn explore again. And Beza. At least they don't get to draw. Sack the treasure to draw. And lay down arms, flyer. I guess we'll try Yuna now. So we can gain life with Overlord. And our opponent explodes. Wow, did not think we had a chance this game. But yeah, opponent maybe not on the Jace build anymore, preparing for rotation, and maybe that's how matchups against blue-white control are going to play out. Although there are still cards like Jadur, the Adventure Land that can mill half of an opponent's library, that could be easily slotted into these blue-white control decks, so that would also give them a better win condition besides just attacking with creatures. Okay, we're on the draw, hand is fine. Early Helga can maybe snowball and take over, but we also have a nice reset button if needed. Facing blue-black, Yuna seems fine. So Dimir's gonna have a decent amount of disruption. And we're not the best at dealing with planeswalkers like Kaito, if that shows up. Forests. I already have 2 untapped lands. So I don't think that's a priority. So yeah, Helga's unlikely to survive. Might be better off impending the Overlord. But they seem to have Kaito. Yeah, that's rough. Kaito can also tap down Helga, so makes me even less likely to want to play it. Also dies to cut down. And Day of Judgment can deal with their Planeswalker, so that's the weakness. So yeah, between a rock and a hard place. The pressure from Kaito is going to add up very quickly. Cecil can transform. Just gotta hope they commit a bunch more creatures that die to our Day of Judgment, so that can line up favorably. But Kaito is still gonna be a problem. And they also have a bunch of creature lands, which are good against our board wipes. Yeah, without an early Kaito, we maybe still have a chance, but turn 3 Kaito with them on the play is just a bit too much pressure. And they also had the turn 1 Cecil that they managed to transform. So now they can kind of just sit back on their counter spells. So we're not gonna manage to do much. Could cast an uncounterable Yuna, but a 3/5 with no additional effects is not gonna cut it. So I think that's game over here. Phantom Interference, my Day of Judgment, untap, animate Kaito. And that'll be it. GG's. Let's see what's next, another land. So yeah, this is just one of those matchups where you needed some cheaper interaction. Needed to draw or get lost to deal with their Planeswalker pretty much. Right now we could still be playing Leyline Binding to benefit from the Everywhere land from the Overlord, but that card's going to rotate out in a month. Alright, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Hand is missing white mana. Overlord can sort of fix for it. So then we just need the one additional white source. I'll try it. And we'll start with Portico. Now Archive, so all the white mana we could hope for. Yeah, I'll keep it in case Overlord gets countered. Opponent on what seems to be the blue-white artifact deck, so Ultima is going to be quite backbreaking. And Overlords I could keep, although going Helga into the green Overlord's already good enough. Maybe we look for Yuna. Nah, I'll still keep the blue Overlord. They've got the Synthesizer on 3, so that's going to put some pressure on us to potentially need to Ultima quite soon already, or we can just Reclamation the Synthesizer, buy ourselves more time, and then wait for a more backbreaking Ultima. I think that makes sense, even though we miss out on our opportunity to ramp. Just do this now in case there's any shenanigans. Possible they have a Spell Pierce to protect it. And then another untapped land, doesn't seem particularly needed. Repurposing Bay can sacrifice the bricks to get another Synthesizer. So I don't think I'm gonna need to Ultima next turn already, so then maybe I can afford to play Helga, give them kind of the feeling that it's okay for them to overextend, and then maybe hit them with Ultima. Possible they spend removal on Helga as well, so then Ultima can maybe get it back. But yeah, I imagine they just get another synth. Nope, opponent gets a Perilous Snare for Helga right away. Fair enough. And the Iron Crag. So next turn that can turn into Synthesizer. In the meantime, I could go for another Helga, or I could just cast A 5-mana Overlord. Impending it, of course, plays better with Ultima. For now, I kind of like just play the green Overlord, develop our mana, give us more options for next turn. At which point I can maybe play Helga and impend. Okay, Sawblade's another 2-mana artifact that can be upgraded with a Bay. But yeah, for right now, we're not under any pressure. Ideally, let them search up all their synthesizers and then blow them up. Hope they don't have a counterspell for Ultima. Another Bay. Trigger synthesizer, already a 6/6. Alright, I think we can stick to the plan of Helga and Bant Overlord. And then this one stays back to block. Or we can still attack for now, since it trades. Opponent's likely to take it, and then I'm okay taking damage from one Overlord. Since, yeah, if Helga dies, it's not a disaster. And draw another Helga. And then might want to discard an enchantment, although this Overlord is going to end up in the graveyard for Yuna as well. So then maybe ditch another Helga, since we'll probably get the other one back from the snare. Surveil. Keep the Verge. And then offer the trade. Opponent accepts. Okay. So hope they get 2 more synthesizers. And then Ultima should be pretty much game over. Currently they're lacking another 2-mana artifact to sacrifice. They have another snare in hand. Alright, this is good enough. They can't counter my Ultima. I guess I forgot Ultima just ends the turn, so I probably should have played a land Dredger's Insight first, but I think we'll survive. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, hand is fine. The Surveillance hoping to mill an enchantment to reanimate with Yuna. Facing Authority. Don't think I need Day of Judgment. Possible they're just kind of a white life gain aggro deck. But then we already have Ultima. Need to keep hitting my land drops. And usually Authority points more towards control. And Dredger's Insights. I guess I'm happy to mill. Could help me hit additional land drops, which right now is kind of a problem. Although if Helga survives, I just need 1 more land to cast my 5 drops. I can always impend the white Overlord. And then we would already have something in graveyard for Yuna to get back. So I think we try this approach, hope to just draw the land naturally. Wouldn't be surprised to see them get an island. No, it's a mountain instead, so it might be red-white tokens. And yeah, Orbrask's Forge confirms that. This card will rotate out soon, but for now it's still pretty effective. Ultima can still take care of it. But I think I still want to play Helga. And then if they don't remove it, I can maybe ramp out something big next turn. Alright, opponent's gonna Helix Helga. So then I could still impend the white Overlord. Or play another Helga, which I think I prefer. Means taking a bit more damage from the Forge, but once we land Yuna, we should be able to make up for it. No Elspeth, which could have been a problem here, doubling their tokens. But our opponent's just gonna Sunfall themselves. And yeah, we don't have land 5 yet for Ultima, otherwise this would have been a pretty good window. So I guess we run it back, 3rd time's a charm. So they can hit us for 6. They could also sack their token to the fountain ports to draw. Nope, looks like they're gonna keep removing Helga. So now I'm also gonna lose my own map tokens to the Ultima if I cast it, but right now I'm still unable to. So yeah, it's not looking good. Tokens enter tapped, so I'm taking 7 next turn. And a land doesn't really matter. So we're dead to a burn spell. For now we can attack. And then I guess we're just dead to Fountain Ports, making a fish end of turn. Although never mind, Ultima would end the turn. So then they don't get a window of opportunity to make a fish. So they should have just sacked their token to draw. Alright, so Ultima ending the turn. Sometimes a drawback, here turns out to be an advantage. So I can go for Yuna, get back a Dredger's Insight, hopefully gain some life. Because it enters tapped, so it's not going to be able to block. So my only hope is gaining a life off Dredger's Insight. So I need to get back a creature or an artifact, so Overlord's my only option. We're at 2, so not dead yet. Another Forge would do it. Caretaker's Talent, if they can get it to level 3, would also be lethal. But they're a bit short on mana. So make another fish, draw a card. Do we get to untap with Yuna? We do. Alright, so now we can gain 3 at least. So, does that keep me alive? Next turn they can pump their tokens, so then we're potentially taking 6. So I might still be dead, because I can't gain life on defense, this only applies in my turn. And we're still a bit short on the Overlord. Yeah, that's too bad. So I guess my only hope is Overlord, draw into Get Lost for their enchantment. So discard another blue Overlord, which can draw again. Because yeah, the tokens also enter tapped. So I've got another redraw towards Get Lost. I'm at 5, but that's not enough. And Dredger's Insight, I'm not going to be able to cast here. Yeah, that's very unfortunate. So close to stabilizing. But the fish tokens are going to go the distance. And Authority made a pretty big impact this game. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. This hand's a little sketchy. Desperately need a third land, ideally a white source, so then once we impend Overlord we're good to go. On the draw with the Surveil, I think we can keep. Opponent black-green, so could be some sort of a Roots graveyard deck. The blue Overlord isn't bad either, but just finding more lands is probably the priority. And then putting it in the graveyard still good once we find Yuna. Opponent's got the black Overlord. So it looks like Golgari graveyard. Not necessarily a Roots deck. Second green Overlord can fix for the second white. Yeah, I'm curious to see how this deck operates now without Up the Beanstalk. Might run out of threats. Marauder, discard. Could be one of the two sweepers, or maybe the White Overlord. I probably don't need Ultima. I don't think our opponent's playing any artifacts I care about. And if I just start casting the White Overlord, we can probably take over. So next turn we can just play a 5-mana Overlord of the Hauntwoods. Could also impend it if we're planning to Day of Judgment afterwards. Alright, the Burrow Fiends can get pretty large. And another Marauder. Now I probably need to ditch one of the Overlords. So then ideally find an untapped white source. A Reclamation can destroy an Overlord, or can exile something from the graveyard eventually. Yeah, I guess for now we can just impend. Pass, and then... yeah, we're gonna take a beating here. Opponent plays Maverick. So let's see. I could exile the Maverick now before they can do it themselves. So they will have a harder time saddling the Burrow Fiend. Because otherwise I just put a +1 counter on the 1/1, and then I get to saddle for free. Alright, opponent milled another Maverick, so there goes that plan. So how much damage am I taking now? Well, I think they would have had lethal if they put the counter on the Maverick and then saddled and attacked for 4 more. Now we're at 1, which is not 0. Now they will get an Overlord end of turn, but we can play our own Overlords. Desperately looking for Yuna to gain life back. Okay, so I can just Day of Judgment. Then we get an Overlord, they get theirs, and then we play Mistmoors. I think that makes more sense given our hand. And then any Overlords of the top are great. Yuna would be amazing. Helga isn't the worst. So if I go Helga, I can't quite impend another Overlord's the problem. Could also be convinced to attack and then Day of Judgment again. We'll see if they block. Because then next turn I can maybe go Helga, impend. And Gravestalker 5/4. They can put some +1 counters on it. Alright, I think we impend here, since we want to get the cards flowing. And then if I attack, I don't have great blocks, so I'm probably better off passing. And then any Overlord now can help us take over. Can still trade for the Gravestalker if they put a counter on it. So yeah, without Beanstalk, this deck does run out of steam. but we're also just top decking here. I'll get in with maybe both flyers. And does our opponent have removal? I guess we have seen the remorse, so then I should maybe keep an extra flyer back. So then I can jump with insect if needed. Could certainly get more aggressive, but I'm hoping my late game is better, especially with Overlord coming into play soon. And with Helga, we can also potentially take over. In hindsight, just casting Overlord might have worked out better since we drew a few lines in a row. Alright, now we get to surveil at least. See what's next. And can I even afford to attack now that we're at 2? I guess I can take one from the Vermin, but they can put a +1 counter on it. So it's too risky if they draw Overwhelming Remorse. Next turn with Overlord coming in, we can maybe get in. Opponent's also floating out a bit. Making a 3-3 is fine. Draw another Helga. Alright, so I can get in with at least one flyer. A Vermin is fine. So yeah, got to see this Bant Yuna deck in action, and there's a lot of ways to build Yuna decks in Standard, even with rotation in mind. I've also experimented with Naya version, since Fear of Missing Out has natural synergy as an enchantment creature that can set up your graveyard. The Red Overlord dealing damage and gaining a life with Yuna is also quite synergistic, so there's a lot of ways you can approach the deck, but I liked the inclusion of Helga to draw more cards to kind of make up for Up the Beanstalk being gone, and then the Blue Overlord naturally also helps us discard other enchantments. So yeah, this deck has some things going for it, but we'll have to wait and see how the metagame develops. But for now, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.